Tyrone sat on the edge of the hard cot, the rough wool blanket scratching against his thin prison-issue pants. The air in the cell block was a stagnant blend of disinfectant and despair, a smell he had grown accustomed to over the past 6 months. Outside, the world moved on, but his life was frozen, caught in the grim machinery of the justice system. He was charged with a crime that could take away 15 years, a lifetime for a man who measured time now in whispered conversations and the clanging of cell doors. He hadn't committed the crime. He knew that. The people in his neighborhood, the ones who actually knew him, they knew it too. But knowing and proving were two different things when the weight of the state was against you. His lawyer, Mr. Davies, was a good man, tired and pragmatic. He did his best, navigating the complexities of the law with a weary competence. But even Mr. Davies had seemed to shrink lately, burdened by the impossibility of their situation. Tyrone watched the dust motes dance in the single shaft of weak light filtering through the barred window. 15 years. Leo would be 26. He would miss everything. Every scraped knee, every school play, every hesitant step into manhood. The thought was a physical ache in his chest. Mr. Davies came one Tuesday, his face etched with more lines than usual. He didn't sit. He paced the small, gray visitor's room, the synthetic fabric of his suit jacket making a faint swishing sound. "They made an offer, Tyrone," Mr. Davies said, his voice low, almost a whisper despite the room's supposed privacy. Tyrone looked up, a flicker of something, hope, maybe, or just plain weariness, in his eyes. "Yeah, a deal," the lawyer confirmed, stopping his pacing to look directly at him. 15 years is a long time, Tyrone. The evidence, it's circumstantial, but it points to you. They have witnesses placing you near the scene. They have motive, however thin. A jury. It's a gamble. The deal. Tyrone prompted, his voice flat. Mr. Davies sighed, running a hand over his thinning hair. They'll cut it significantly. Maybe probation, time served. You could walk. Walk. The word hung in the air, impossibly light, impossibly tempting. Freedom. The street sounds, the smell of rain on pavement, the sight of Leo's face without a thick pane of glass between them. What do I have to do? Tyrone asked, though a cold dread was already settling in his stomach. Deals always came with a price, and often it was steeper than the years behind bars. Mr. Davies hesitated, his gaze dropping to the scuffed floor. They want names, Tyrone. They want you to tell them who was involved. The network, the suppliers. They know this wasn't a solo act, not really. They want you to cooperate. Tyrone felt the cold solidify into a hard knot in his gut. Name names. Your neighborhood, Tyrone, Mr. Davies clarified, though it wasn't necessary. They wanted him to become an informant, to point fingers, inevitably implicating people he grew up with, neighbors, maybe even some who were innocent themselves caught in the wider net. It was the code of the street, you didn't snitch. Not ever. It was also a moral line Tyrone couldn't cross. He was innocent of the crime they accused him of, but cooperating in their hunt, possibly sending others down while clearing his own name through betrayal. It felt like a different kind of guilt. No, Tyrone said. Mr. Davies looked up sharply. Tyrone, think about this. 15 years. You're 50. 15 years, you'll be old man when you get out. If you get out. I said no, Tyrone repeated, his voice quiet but firm. The knot was still there, but beneath it, a steel rod of resolve had formed. He wouldn't lie to save himself, and he wouldn't betray his principles or his community, even under this duress. The state wanted a scapegoat or an informant. He refused to be either. Tyrone, this is suicide, Mr. Davies exclaimed, his composure cracking. You walk into that courtroom, the jury hears the prosecution's case. I can only do so much. They have a narrative, and right now you fit it. You say no to this deal, you're looking at a conviction. 15 years. Minimum. I didn't do it, Mr. Davies, Tyrone said, meeting his lawyer's desperate gaze. And I won't lie about who did or didn't just to get out. There has to be another way. Mr. Davies sank into the chair, defeated. There isn't. Not legally. Not with the evidence they have. This is your one shot, Tyrone. Your only shot. Then it's not my shot, Tyrone replied, standing. The guard was already signaling the end of the visit. He walked towards the door, leaving his bewildered lawyer sitting alone in the sterile room. What happened next was a slow, grinding descent towards the inevitable. The trial date was set. The days bled into weeks, each one a rehearsal for the public dismantling of his life. Mr. Davies worked tirelessly, exploring every angle, filing motions, but the weight of the circumstantial evidence felt crushing. Tyrone watched the process with a quiet resignation that Mr. Davies mistook for apathy. In truth, his mind was sharper than it had been in years, observing, absorbing, remembering. He had always had a knack for details, a habit of jotting down thoughts, observations, scraps of conversation in cheap notebooks. It was a way of processing the chaotic world he lived in. He continued this practice even in jail, documenting the mundane, the routine, the specific times of meals, lockdowns, visitor calls. He didn't know why. It just felt important to record the undeniable truth of his existence. Hour by hour, day by day, the trial began. Tyrone sat beside Mr. Davies, dressed in a borrowed suit that felt alien and uncomfortable. The courtroom was a cavernous, imposing space, filled with hushed whispers and the low hum of the air conditioning. The prosecution presented their case, weaving a plausible, damning narrative based on the proximity evidence, the alleged motive, the tenuous links they had manufactured. Each piece of testimony felt like a nail in his coffin. He saw people from his neighborhood in the gallery, some avoiding his eyes, others offering hesitant nods of support. He saw the prosecutor, sharp and confident, painting him as a hardened criminal. He saw the judge, impassive, a figure of authority detached from the human cost of the proceedings. And he saw him, Marcus, sitting in the back of the gallery, a picture of casual disinterest. Marcus, who was actually involved, who had manipulated the situation, who had connections the state either couldn't touch or didn't want to. Marcus, who should have been in his seat. A wave of cold fury, quickly suppressed, went through Tyrone. He maintained his quiet composure, watching, listening. Mr. Davies did his best, cross-examining witnesses, raising doubts, poking holes where he could. But the momentum was against them. The narrative had taken hold. During a break, Mr. Davies leaned over, his voice heavy with defeat. Tyrone, it's not looking good. The jury, I can see it on their faces. We need something, anything, to shift this. Do you have any alibi, anything concrete for the times they're focused on? Anything at all? Tyrone looked at his lawyer, then at the small notebook he always kept with him, even in jail. The one where he documented everything. He hadn't thought of it as evidence, just a habit. But as Mr. Davies spoke, a new thought, hesitant at first, then bold and terrifying, formed in his mind. The journal, Tyrone said softly. Mr. Davies frowned. Your journal? What about it? I wrote everything down, Mr. Davies. Every day. The times. The visits. The lockdowns. Everything. Mr. Davies stared at him. Everything. Yes. The times they're talking about. The crime. I was in lockdown. I was talking to the guard. It's all in there. The exact times. A flicker of something sparked in Mr. Davies's tired eyes. Doubt warred with a desperate hope. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Didn't think it mattered, Tyrone admitted. It was just his routine, his way of coping, not intended as a legal document. But it's truth, Mr. Davies. Undeniable truth. Mr. Davies snatched the notebook, a cheap, spiral-bound thing with a worn cover. He flipped through it, his eyes widening. The meticulous entries, the dates, the precise times noted for even the most mundane events. It wasn't just random jottings. It was a detailed, unsolicited log of a man's existence within a controlled environment. And within those pages, for the critical moments the prosecution highlighted, Tyrone's journal placed him firmly inside the jail, accounted for. But presenting his own journal felt weak, easily dismissed as fabricated. They needed something more. Something unexpected. Something unassailable. Mr. Davies looked at the neat handwriting, then at Tyrone, and finally his gaze settled on the gallery, specifically on the small, anxious figure of Leo, sitting with a neighbor. An idea, audacious and risky, began to form. "Tyrone," Mr. Davies said, his voice tight with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "We have one last chance. A gamble. But it's the only one we have." What happened next defied all expectations. Mr. Davies, against the strong advice of some colleagues and the clear skepticism of the prosecution, announced a surprise witness for the defense. A young boy. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. A child witness? What could a child know about a complex case like this? The judge, looking stern, allowed it, demanding the rules of relevance be strictly observed. Then he walked up. 11-year-old Leo, small for his age, swallowed by the large courtroom. He wore a slightly too big hoodie, his hands shoved deep in the pockets. His eyes, wide and serious, scanned the room until they found his father. A micro-expression of fear crossed his face, quickly replaced by a determined set to his jaw. He walked with a hesitant gait towards the witness stand, every step echoing in the sudden quiet. He reached the stand, clambered onto the high chair that was adjusted for him, his sneakers dangling above the floor. He looked even smaller there, vulnerable, a child in a world of adults and consequence. The court clerk administered the oath. Leo mumbled his affirmation, his voice barely audible. Mr. Davies approached him slowly, a gentle smile on his face. "Hello, Leo. Can you hear me okay?" Leo nodded, clutching something hidden in his hoodie pocket. "Leo," Mr. Davies continued, his voice kind, "we know this is hard, but you're here to tell the truth, right?" "Yes, sir," Leo said, his voice a little stronger this time. "Can you tell the court your full name?" "Leo Johnson." "And Leo, do you know why you're here today?" Leo looked at his father. "To help my dad." Mr. Davies nodded. "That's right. Now, Leo, do you recognize this?" He gestured towards the small, worn notebook on the defense table. Leo's eyes widened slightly. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out an identical notebook, crinkled, slightly dog-eared, clearly well-used. He held it tight. "Yes," Leo said. "Dad writes in them." "Your father writes in these notebooks?" Mr. Davies asked, guiding the testimony. "Yeah, all the time. He says it helps him think and remember things." "And did your father ask you to keep something for him before he came here?" Leo nodded again. "Yeah, he gave me this one." He held up the notebook in his hand. He said it was important, and I should keep it safe." Mr. Davies approached the bench. "Your Honor, we submit this notebook as Exhibit Defense A. It is the journal kept by the defendant during the period in question, entrusted to his son for safekeeping." The prosecutor rose instantly. "Objection. Hearsay. The defendant cannot introduce his own self-serving statements through his child." "Your Honor," Mr. Davies countered, "this is not hearsay. This is a contemporaneous record, a journal kept as a personal habit, not for the purpose of litigation. It serves as an objective record of the defendant's location and activities at precise times. Its credibility is established by the defendant's long-standing habit, attested to by the witness, and the fact that it was written while he was incarcerated, documenting verifiable facts like lockdowns and official visits that can be corroborated." The judge considered this, looking at the small boy, the notebook, then at Tyrone. After a tense moment, he ruled. "Objection overruled. The document is admitted. The witness may proceed to read from it." A collective exhale swept through the courtroom. The prosecutor looked furious. Marcus looked like he'd been hit. Leo, clutching the notebook, looked at Mr. Davies, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. "Leo," Mr. Davies said gently, "can you read from the notebook for the court? Can you find the pages I marked for you?" Mr. Davies had quickly flagged the relevant dates and times during the break. Leo nodded, his small fingers fumbling slightly with the pages. He found the first marked section. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the small boy and the crumpled notebook. Leo cleared his throat, took a deep breath, and began to read. His voice, though young and a little shaky at first, grew clearer, stronger, as he read his father's words. Entry, August 14th. Leo read, haltingly but clearly. 2 o'clock post-lunch lockdown initiated. Officer Miller confirmed count. Cell search conducted 2:15 to 2:25. Guard shift change 2:30. Spoke with Miller about the broken light fixture at 2:35. Reading, The Count of Monte Cristo, Chapter 14. The date and time Leo read corresponded exactly to the critical window the prosecution claimed Tyrone was on the other side of town, committing the crime. The mundane details, the officer's name, the broken light fixture, the chapter he was reading, anchored the entry in undeniable reality. An officer could be called to corroborate the light fixture, the standard procedure of lockdowns. Leo turned the page, finding the next marked section. Entry, August 16th. Visitor log, Mr. Davies, 10 a.m. Discussed plea offer. Said no. Feels like suicide. But won't name names. Can't. They want lies. I only have truth. A gasp went through the gallery. Tyrone's refusal of the deal, the one the state was so sure he would take, was laid bare. It showed his integrity, his unwavering refusal to cooperate with a system that wanted him to betray others, regardless of their guilt. It directly contradicted the prosecution's implicit portrayal of him as a man willing to do anything to save his own skin. Leo continued reading, his voice now steady, gaining confidence from the weight of his father's words. He read entries documenting every hour of those critical days, meticulously detailing Tyrone's confined existence. He read about the specific time the evening meal arrived on August 14th, the exact minute the cell block lights went out, the conversation he overheard between 2 guards about a broken pipe on August 15th. Details that only someone physically present, documenting their reality, could possibly know. Then, Leo turned to the final marked section. His voice changed slightly, a hint of confusion, maybe understanding, creeping in as he read entries that weren't just about Tyrone's routine, but observations about the outside world, filtered through visitors and brief news reports, cross-referenced with Tyrone's sharp memory for detail. Entry, August 17th. Leo read, heard from Jones today. Said Marcus was acting strange on the 14th. Flashing cash. Bragging about a score. Said Marcus was wearing that distinctive jacket. The one with the patch. Same one witness described at the scene of the crime. Jones said Marcus went quiet after the news broke about my arrest. Very quiet. Funny how the state isn't looking at Marcus. Maybe because of his cousin on the force? Or the money he gives around. The courtroom didn't breathe. Not a rustle, not a cough. Just the clear, young voice of Leo, reading his father's observations. Observations not just of his own confinement, but of the world outside, drawing connections, highlighting inconsistencies, and pointing a direct, unvarnished finger at the real criminal, Marcus, sitting just rows away. Tyrone's notes weren't just an alibi. They were a quiet, ongoing investigation, conducted from behind bars, meticulously recording evidence that the official channels had missed, ignored, or suppressed. Leo finished reading the marked passages. He lowered the notebook slightly, looking out at the courtroom with those serious, intelligent eyes. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. The prosecutor was ashen-faced, flipping frantically through his notes, clearly blindsided. The judge looked down from his bench, his expression unreadable, but his body rigid with attention. The jury members stared, their faces ranging from shock to dawning comprehension. And Marcus had gone from smug confidence to a mask of panic. His eyes darted towards the door, his body tensed. He knew, everyone knew. Tyrone, through his simple act of recording truth, and Leo, through his courage in reading it, had exposed everything. The air crackled with the undeniable weight of the revelation. 5 minutes. The courtroom didn't breathe for 5 straight minutes. What happened next was swift and decisive. The prosecutor, regaining his composure, attempted to cross-examine Leo, trying to portray the journal entries as coached or fabricated. But Leo, coached only by his father's quiet integrity and armed with the simple truth of the words on the page, held firm. He didn't elaborate or speculate. He just confirmed that these were his father's writings, given to him for safekeeping. His innocence, his age, his simple presentation of fact made him an unshakable witness. As Leo stepped down, the judge called a recess. Marcus, seeing the eyes of the marshals on him, made a move towards the exit, but he was stopped. Whispers erupted as he was quietly, but firmly, escorted out of the courtroom under suspicion. Mr. Davies didn't need to call another witness. The prosecution, faced with irrefutable evidence of Tyrone's location and powerful, albeit circumstantial, evidence pointing to their own overlooked suspect, had no case. During the recess, negotiations happened quickly. The charge against Tyrone Johnson was dropped. Instantly, what happened next was a release, a wave of relief washing over Tyrone so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He stood there, innocent in the eyes of the law once more, his freedom handed back to him not by a deal or a lie, but by his own integrity and the courage of his son. Mr. Davies clasped his shoulder, his face beaming, weary lines replaced by genuine admiration. The first thing Tyrone did was embrace Leo. He knelt right there in the courtroom, ignoring the stares, and pulled his son into a fierce hug. Leo clung to him, burying his face in his father's shoulder. Tears welled in Tyrone's eyes, tears of gratitude, of love, of overwhelming relief. His son, his quiet, observant son, who had held on to the truth, quite literally, and delivered it when it mattered most. What happened next for Marcus was predictable. The information in Tyrone's journal, combined with the renewed focus on his activities and connections, led to a rapid investigation. The details Tyrone had meticulously recorded, cross-referenced and verified, provided the concrete links the police needed. Marcus was arrested and, facing the weight of the evidence and potentially complicit associates, quickly crumbled, confessing his role in the crime that had nearly cost Tyrone 15 years of his life. Justice, delayed but not denied, was served. What happened next for Tyrone and Leo was the beginning of healing. They left the courthouse together, walking out into the sunlight that felt warmer, brighter than he remembered. The neighborhood, which had been divided by the accusation, now rallied around him. They saw not a man who had been charged, but a man of principle who had refused to betray them, even for his freedom, and whose quiet strength had brought down the real culprit. Tyrone's journal, the unassuming notebook he had filled with the texture of his days, became more than just evidence. It became a symbol of truth, of resilience, of the power of observation in a world that often overlooks the quiet details. He hadn't been a spy or a detective, just a man determined to hold on to his reality, piece by careful piece, even when everyone else was trying to redefine it. His story spread, a testament to the fact that truth can surface in the most unexpected ways, carried by the most unlikely hands. It showed that character isn't measured by circumstance, but by choice, and that integrity, even when it seems like a burden, is the strongest shield and the sharpest weapon. What happened next for Leo was a recognition of his own courage. He was celebrated quietly for his bravery in the courtroom. But for Leo, the real reward was having his father back. He learned a profound lesson about truth and standing up for what is right, a lesson taught not by words, but by his father's quiet example and his own actions. So, what can we learn from Tyrone's story? We learn that judgment based on appearance or circumstance is always a dangerous thing. Tyrone was a man in a difficult situation, easily painted as a criminal by those who didn't know him. But beneath the surface, he possessed an unbreakable core of integrity and a sharp mind that noticed and recorded the world around him. We learn that truth has a power all its own. Tyrone didn't need elaborate defenses or cunning strategies. He simply needed the truth of his own lived experience, painstakingly documented. And when that truth was revealed, it was irrefutable. We learn about hidden potential, not just in Tyrone's quiet strength, but in Leo, the child who seemed small and vulnerable, yet held the key to his father's freedom and spoke with a voice that silenced a courtroom. Potential isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is found in the quietest corners, waiting for its moment. And we learn that resilience isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about maintaining your character through the hardship. Tyrone's refusal to compromise his values, even when faced with a crushing sentence, was an act of profound resilience that ultimately saved him. Consider this story. Think about the times you might have judged someone too quickly, or when speaking the truth felt too difficult or dangerous. Think about the quiet people in your own life. What unseen strengths might they possess? Perhaps the next time you face a challenge or witness an injustice, you will remember Tyrone and Leo. Remember that the most powerful tool you possess might just be your own integrity, your careful observation of the world, and the courage to let the truth, in whatever form you hold it, finally be seen. Share this story, because sometimes the quietest voices hold the most important truths.